Chapter 53. Midsummer's night descended late, enveloping the city of Zhonghai with what seemed to be gentle darkness. Only the dazzling neon lights allowed the pedestrians to see each other's faces. Along the bi-directional 8-lane highway encircling the city, one could see the countless traffic that looked like shooting stars. Some were entering the heart of the city, while some were leaving the oppressive concrete garden. On the roadside greenery in the north of Zhonghai and along the Yangtze River, were thinly spread street lights that had insects dancing around the lights. This was a quiet scene that was hard to come by even though that moment still had the scorching heat like daytime. Close by was the meandering river that seemed to have no end, like a belt of jade that fell from the firmament, mutually echoing with the Milky Way in the skies, and mirroring a long string of white buildings by the river. This was the most expensive hospital in Zhonghai. The quiet and secluded environment let their patients recuperate better. But similarly, the bills that came with it were so high that ordinary folks would jump back in fright. At this moment, in the hospital's intensive care department, on a spacious and serene corridor, Yang Chen and Wang Ma sat on a bench specially placed for people to wait, quietly waiting for something outside the intensive care unit. Yang Chen had remained taciturn for a long while, before he was finally a little impatient, and dug his hand into his pocket to extract a cigarette, but he suddenly remembered that this was a hospital, and could only put it back angrily. Sighing, he stood up, and paced back and forth. Young master. Wang Ma's eyes were red. She had cried not too long ago, and spoke with worry. Young master, why haven't the doctors and nurses come out yet? Miss shouldn't have any life-threatening issues, right? Don't worry, although I'm no doctor, I still have some medical knowledge. Ruoxi will be fine. Yang Chen consoled her. The scene of him sending Lin Ruoxi to the hospital in the evening replayed over in his mind, and he too had difficulties setting himself at ease. Right after Yang Chen had dropped Lin Kun into the garbage bin, he turned around and immediately saw Lin Ruoxi's legs turn weak as she stood on the lawn and fell onto the ground. Like a bullet, Yang Chen sped towards Lin Ruoxi's side and held her, and he noticed that she was unconscious. His past experiences allowed him to remain calm, unlike the flustered Wang Ma. He calmly took out his phone, called for an ambulance, and carried Lin Ruoxi back into the house. After a simple check, he discovered that Lin Ruoxi had a high fever, so he immediately had Wang Ma bring over a cold towel and other first aid items, and took care of her until the ambulance came and brought her to the hospital. Due to the string of incidents, Yang Chen's heart was in a mess. Although this woman who was as cold as ice and who had no understanding of expressions never gave him a look with kindness or happiness, but once something like this happened to her, Yang Chen helplessly realized that he was truly worried for her from the bottom of his heart. Is it because she resembles her too much? Or is it because she is my legal wife? Perhaps, it is only because of her. While Yang Chen was in a state of emotional disorder, the intensive care unit was opened. Wang Ma moved up to hold onto the doctor's elbow and asked, "Doctor, how's?" The doctor wore a soothing smile. "Don't worry, the crucial time has passed, and the fever has been brought down. A good rest is needed next." That's good, Wang Ma was so happy that she shed tears again. "Thank you, doctor." The doctor took a look at the information on his phone, and in a reserved manner he asked, "Excuse me, does Miss Lin have a lot of pressure from work recently?" Wang Ma blanked for a moment, and honestly replied, "That's right, doctor, my family's miss has always been working very hard, however these days she works overnight frequently. Is there a problem?" "Miss Lin's body is very weak. According to our diagnosis, it should be caused by excessive pressure from work, and psychological burdens." The doctor frowned as he said, "This time's fever is also because the body's weak, and was suffering a cold. She mustn't have had good sleep. At this rate, even if she's fine this time, there will be repeat occurrences, and when that happens, this sickness will take its roots, and the body will be totally worn out." Wang Ma's heart jumped up to her throat. "Doctor, what can we do? My family's miss must be cured." The doctor smiled and said, "Don't worry, this isn't too big of an illness, the patient only needs to go through a period of good rest. If she can stay in the hospital for about half a month and take Chinese medicine to recuperate, then complete recovery is possible." Wang Ma revealed a distressed expression. "Half a month, I'm afraid that Miss won't agree." "She must agree." Yang Chen dully inserted these words with a tone that did not allow negotiation. Then, to the doctor he said, "Doctor, other than recuperation through Chinese medicine, what else needs to be done?" "You're I am Lin Ruoxi's husband, my name's Yang Chen. The doctor revealed astonishment, but immediately smiled and said, "Oh, I apologize, I had no idea Miss Lin was married. If Mr. Yang has free time, you may accompany your wife to the hospital's garden to breathe in some fresh air. The patient's psychological burdens need to be stemmed as well, the recovery of the body is not enough." Yang Chen nodded, looking profound. Taking control of a company like Yulei International that was the top of the pyramid in the fashion industry at such a young age, without any kin at home, while all her only living kin, her father does is create trouble without any kind of contribution. In the business world she had to deal with so many sly enemies, yet her social life was so lonely and helpless. Moreover, being coveted by young masters of rich families like Xu Zihong, for this woman to endure until now, she is worthy of reverence from the bottom of one's heart. After seeing off some medical personnel, Wang Ma sighed, and said, "Young master, since Miss must be hospitalized, then I'll go back to retrieve some essential items. It wouldn't be good if Miss wakes up and isn't able to get anything she needs." "Thanks for your trouble, Wang Ma." Yang Chen sincerely smiled. Actually, Lin Ruoxi wasn't completely alone, at least there was someone like Wang Ma who watched her grow up by her side, and took care of her. Wang Ma shook her head, a little touched. "All I'm doing is little trivial matters. If it wasn't for young master, Miss might be forced into a dead end by master. Young master is the one who did something worth noting. For Miss to choose young master, that truly was a decision that cannot be more correct." Unable to deny, Yang Chen laughed at himself. If it weren't for him truly having a skill or two, Lin Ruoxi would most likely be pushed into dire straits by Lin Kun. She coincidentally insisted on marrying him, and unexpectedly she struck first prize there. After Wang Ma left, Yang Chen softly opened the wooden door of the ward, and entered it with gentle footsteps. The room was dark, with only the bed lamp emitting a gentle glow which enveloped the pure white sickbed. Lin Ruoxi's black hair was scattered all over, her usually cold and beautiful face now seemed weak. She was silent with closed eyes, and her breathing was normal, but her eyebrows were slightly wrinkled, as if she was having a bad dream. Does she face problems even in her dreams? Yang Chen sat down on a chair beside the bed. He gazed entranced at the unconscious woman in front of him while deep in thought. Her figure, her face, and her character were all so similar to that person. Gradually, Yang Chen lost track of time. Asterisk knock knock. Asterisk. The ward's door was suddenly knocked twice, and before Yang Chen could turn his head, somebody had gently opened the door and walked in. Chapter 54. The person who entered even breathed carefully, as if afraid of waking up Lin Ruoxi who slept on the bed. Yang Chen knew from the footsteps that it wasn't Wang Ma. He puzzlingly turned around to look at the person who entered, and was flabbergasted. "Why is it you?" Mo Qianni first asked in amazement, and widened her cute and limpid eyes, making her lovely and charming face seem extremely enticing under the gloomy lights. "This is my question as well, why are you here?" Yang Chen frowned. After all, the relationship between him and Lin Ruoxi had been confidential. If Mo Qianni finds out, it might bring many unnecessary troubles to the both of them. While the two of them were still bewildered, the door once again opened. Wang Ma dragged in a suitcase, wore a smile and said, "Miss Mo, this is the young master I mentioned. It is all because of young master that Miss was able to hold out till now." Wang Ma, Mo Qianni pointed at Yang Chen with disbelief, and nearly cried out from the shock, You're saying Yang Chen is Ruoxi's husband. Why are you shocked?" Since Wang Ma already let the cat out of the bag, Yang Chen was no longer willing to pretend. He made an evil smile and asked, "Or you could say I hurt Miss Mo's heart, as she discovered that she lost her chance to have something happen between her and an outstanding man like me." Asterisk spit. Asterisk Mo Qianni clenched her teeth, panted with rage and said, "I'm just puzzled, why would Ruoxi suddenly marry you without a word, and even chose a rogue like you as her husband? You must have used some kind of trick or scheme." Wang Ma saw the two at each other's throats the moment they met, and hurriedly stopped them saying, all right, Miss Mo, young master, this is still a ward, the two of you are the ones closest to Miss, it's better to argue less and be more amiable." Yang Chen's mouth twitched, and he asked, "Wang Ma, why would you come here together with her?" Wang Ma smiled and explained, "When I returned home to grab the suitcase, Miss Mo called to ask if Miss was home. Young master may not know this, but Miss Mo and Miss have known each other for a long time. They were frequently together when old mistress was still alive. Now they are also working together in Ulay International. Which is why their relationship is very good. In the past she also came to eat in our house often, and only came less frequently after old mistress passed away. Which is why when Miss Mo asked about this, I didn't conceal the truth. When Miss Mo heard that Miss was hospitalized, she insisted on coming with me to see her. It's unexpected that Mo Chiani and Lin Ruoxi were actually best friends. That's right, when he saw them in the company, he realized that his wife and his superior had a very good relationship, so it turns out that they were close privately. Then I'd like to thank you for your concern, Miss Mo. Ruoxi has already passed the dangerous period. If you feel tired, you may return home and sleep with ease. Mo Chiani rolled her eyes at Yang Chen, although she still felt gloomy and annoyed that a person like this became the CEO's husband. This wasn't the time to discuss about such things. Walking to the side of the bed, she carefully examined Lin Ruoxi's pale face, and with worry she said, "If you want to sleep you can do that on your own, I want to stay. It's not like she's your wife, what are you accompanying her for?" Yang Chen joked. Fuck. Mo Chiani blew her top, "You better not think highly of yourself just because you became Ruoxi's husband. We've known each other for 8 years, you don't know a thing. All I know is, if you continue speaking so loudly, my darling wife is going to be woken up by you." Yang Chen helpless made a gesture telling her to be silent. Mo Chiani immediately covered her mouth, stared at Yang Chen and spoke softly, "I finally understand why Ruoxi was so firmly against firing you, as it turns out you cannot be fired. That is me being serious, responsible and capable." Yang Chen winked at Mo Chiani, "Miss Mo, don't forget to give me a bonus at the end of the month. I managed to recover $400,000. Bringing up this matter, a pit of fire reignited in Mo Chiani's heart. She coldly snorted, and no longer paid attention to Yang Chen. She pulled a chair over and sat by the bed as well, and didn't speak a word more. Wang Ma, who was in the corner sorting out her things, saw this scene and could only sigh. A silent night with the moonlight like a clear spring cascading through the ward's window, seeming comfortable and serene. It was already midnight. Wang Ma, who had finished sorting out the clothes and other essential items, hesitated for a long time before deciding to return to the villa at Dragon Garden to wait. After all, someone had to look after such a big house, and conduct various chores. Moreover, there were specialized nursing personnel in the hospital. She could also accompany Lin Ruoxi during the day, so staying overnight wasn't really necessary. In the ward, other than Lin Ruoxi, who was sleeping soundly, there was only Yang Chen and Mo Chiani, who sat on opposite sides of the bed, keeping silent. After some time passed, Mo Chiani truly couldn't endure the dead atmosphere and said, "How did you get married with Ruoxi? She never said a word about this to me before. We originally intended to keep it under wraps, but since you've already found out, I hope you won't reveal this to anybody," said Yang Chen. "I'm no gossip girl. I'm more of a sister to Ruoxi." Mo Chiani was somewhat dissatisfied. "In contrast, you suddenly appeared and became Ruoxi's husband. Is it because you used some immoral scheme?" Yang Chen laughed. "From what Wang Ma said, the two of you knew each other since young. You should be more familiar with her than me, right?" "That's right." Mo Chiani said, "When I was young, it was Ruoxi's granny, who was also the previous CEO, that helped me, which is why I am who I am today. Ruoxi is my dear sister, and also my benefactor's flesh and blood. I definitely won't allow anybody to harm her." Yang Chen ignored Mo Chiani's gaze, which was full of wariness, and continued by saying, "Since the two of you have known each other for so long, who do you think is more intelligent, you or her?" "She's smarter." Mo Chiani was very upfront. She rolled her eyes at Yang Chen and said, "Although I don't really like to admit it, but since young till now, she has always been a cut above me in everything we do. All I want is to do my part, and help share her burdens in work." "Then do you think that she wouldn't think of what you were able to come up with? For us to get married, I had my own reasons and she had hers. It's none of your business," said Yang Chen. Mo Chiani clenched her teeth and said, "If you don't want to say it then don't. You're full of fallacious reasoning, and you curse without vulgarities. You better not think that I can't manage you just because you're Ruoxi's husband. I'm still your superior. All I do is play some high IQ games, and chat with your sisters during my leisure time. Let me give you some advice for your own mental well-being. If you don't give me trouble, I would be too lazy to bother you. Yang Chen shook his head and stood up. It's already late. I still have things to do tomorrow. Miss Mo, if you wish to go home I can give you a lift, but if you wish to continue staying, remember not to catch a cold. With that said, he wore a weird smile as he glanced at Lin Ruoxi, and walked out of the room without turning back. Mo Qianni swung her little fist behind Yang Chen. She wanted to stamp her feet and curse a little, but in the end she still endured. Not long after Yang Chen left, Mo Qianni made a long sigh. She felt that it wasn't worth getting angry over a person like that, and extended her hand to hold Lin Ruoxi's. She softly muttered to herself, Ruoxi, why did you choose a rogue like this as your husband? Even if it's to put up a signboard and cheat others, you don't need to torment yourself like that, right? Actually it's still alright. Mo Qianni was stunned. She raised her head to look. It was unclear when Lin Ruoxi opened her eyes. Although Lin Ruoxi had a tired complexion, she still woke up, and looked at her gently. Ruoxi, you're awake. When did you wake up? Mo Qianni was pleasantly surprised. Lin Ruoxi weakly revealed a slight smile, obviously extremely intimate with a rare friend like Mo Qianni. He left so I woke up. Could it be that you've long been awake, and deliberately waited for him to leave? Mo Qianni didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. If he's here, I don't dare to wake up. A complicated expression flashed through Lin Ruoxi's eyes. She didn't speak more after that, and closed her eyes to recuperate. Chapter 55. At night, in Zhang Hai's Shu family's brightly lit huge villa, surrounded by large gardens and alleys, with security personnel patrolling everywhere. In a Baroque-styled room that was relatively dim, Xu Zihong, who wore a black pajamas, sat by a bar counter, and poured himself a glass of Lafite red wine. He raised it and swirled it a few times. Before he took a sip, the sound of knocking was heard from the door. Enter. Xu Zihong creased his eyebrows. Harry Ball happily walked in wearing a t-shirt that was washed till it lost color and a pair of holey jeans. The beard on his face looked as if it hadn't been shaved for weeks, while his body odor could be smelt from far away. How many times have I told you this? The door is an art piece. If you want to enter, shout. Xu Zihong felt helpless towards this subordinate of his. Harry Ball laughed and said, I was too excited, and forgot this matter. You never remembered it before. Xu Zihong glared at Harry Ball. Harry Ball's mood became deflated, and he subconsciously scratched his oily head. Young master, do you know what I saw today? Xu Zihong walked to the window, and dully said, don't beat around the bush. You're so unhumorous, no wonder you can't pick up that little girl with the surname Lin, Harry Ball murmured, then said, Lin Kun came to visit. He asked for help to deal with that Yang Chen. I wanted to take advantage of that situation, and lent him 5 retired soldiers. Unexpectedly, those 5 people were put down by Yang Chen alone today. That Lin Kun was thrown into the garbage bin again. Don't you think it's funny, young master? Ha ha. That is his father-in-law, and he threw him into the garbage bin twice. Xu Zihong swirled the wine glass in his hand, contemplated for a moment, and said, seems like this Yang Chen's truly not simple. It's a pity that there's so little information on him, it's too difficult to understand him. Harry Ball spoke a line in ridicule, it can't be that young master is afraid, right? Afraid. Xu Zihong coldly smiled, all he knows how to do is a few punches and kicks, and speak with a rogue tongue. Why would I be afraid of him? A crouching tiger can't deal with a hidden dragon. He's a small character that returned from overseas a little more than half a year ago. Is it possible that he can overturn the heavens? Then how about I go deal with him now? I heard the few useless henchmen say that his movements were very fast, my hands are itching right now. Said Harry Ball excitedly. Xu Zihong shook his head, no need, regarding this matter, we shan't meddle in it temporarily. To speak of how Lin Ruoxi is like normally, she probably doesn't even know herself. In this city, she might not be the most intelligent woman, and might not be the most low-key woman, but she is definitely one of the most dangerous women. Don't push her over the edge and force her to do things that she doesn't want to do. Young master, you've always looked at Miss Lin with such importance, just what capabilities does she have? Harry Balls puzzlingly asked. Xu Zihong sipped a little of the red wine, actually I'm not entirely sure as well, but it's never wrong to be more careful. As for the matter Reg. Young master is wise. Boot lick less. Get the hell out of my room and take a shower. Actually I just bathed last week. At dawn, on the next day, Yang Chen drove his car to the West Region's food market to procure breakfast. As expected, old Li as before set up his stall at his usual spot, with a happy face. It seemed like he was in a very good mood. It seemed like he learned of what happened to the Chen family's father and son, and been released of all the burdens in his heart. Seeing Yang Chen walk over, he smiled and greeted, "Little Yang, you've come. I heard from the others that you've started working at a company. That's great, that seems more like something a youngster should do. Both jobs are work, there isn't much of a difference." Yang Chen smiled and said, "It's a pity that in the future I won't have much time to boast and idly chat with you guys. Working in an office is actually less comfortable." Old Li mischievously smiled and said, "That little girl Jingjing was very cheerful last night. Did you say something to her?" Yang Chen pondered for a moment, and said, "I promised to visit her in her school today." Old Li had an expression of sudden enlightenment. He patted Yang Chen's shoulders. "Young people should get together well. My family's Jingjing has a very pure character. You better not let her suffer, otherwise I won't forgive you." Seeing old Li's "I knew it" expression, Yang Chen wanted to explain, but the words that went up to his throat was too difficult to say, so he could only swallow it back in an awkwardly nod. Once again bringing in various bags of breakfast to the office, the group of PR department ladies had already raised their heads in longing. Seeing the myriad of breakfasts, they once again sang praises at Yang Chen. Soon after Yang Chen sat on his chair, he felt the urge to turn on his computer and begin a new day of his professional gaming career, but saw Mo Qianni, who had a tired expression, enter the office. Mo Qianni glanced at Yang Chen, saw the remainders of a big bag of youtiao on Yang Chen's desk, and was immediately overwhelmed by anger. This fella, as somebody's husband, his wife is in the hospital, yet he didn't attend to her, and instead bought a heap of breakfast for the ladies in the office. She couldn't help but look at him with disdain and ridicule. "You're very considerate to your colleagues, and even do your best at buying breakfast. But I wonder if you will remember to bring some to a certain someone. Miss Mo wants some. It's alright, there's still a lot left." Yang Chen raised a meat bun in his hand, generously extending it to Mo Qianni. "You know who I am talking about," Mo Qianni said softly. Yang Chen helplessly laughed. "Ruoxi should be eating light and healthy food. Wang Ma would naturally send it after cooking. I can't possibly be bringing meat buns and youtiaos to a patient that needs to recuperate, right? Heartless. You don't need to find excuses." Although this explanation was very reasonable, Mo Qianni didn't accept it. Discovering that this woman's prejudice against himself was already humongous, Yang Chen didn't plan on wasting his efforts trying to please her. He shrugged his shoulders, put the bun into his mouth and began to eat it. Mo Qianni had accompanied Lin Ruoxi all night at the hospital, and she was hungry. After smelling the aroma in the office, her stomach rumbled in hunger. Seeing Yang Chen take back the meat bun, made her even madder, and cursed Yang Chen for being petty and tactless. She quickly reached out and grabbed a bag of steamed dumplings from the table and Breeze walked into her office. "Hungry yet still tries to argue," Yang Chen whispered as he laughed. When it was lunchtime, Yang Chen gracefully declined the three ladies' invitation to eat lunch together, and drove to the hospital. During the day, Zhonghai First Hospital was rather cold. After all, the hospital was big, yet the patients were few. However, this was perfectly suited for patients to convalesce. Yang Chen followed the path to Lin Ruoxi's ward. The door was opened, and voices transmitted outwards from the inside. Walking closer and taking a careful look, it was the two acquaintances from 2 days ago. "Ruoxi, I have good relations with this hospital's chairman. How about I have them give you the best nursing ward? Take this as my little gift." Lin Ruoxi leaned against the pure white pillow. Her ice mountain-like fair face looked out of the window and at the sky, and clearly said, "Not necessary, thank you for visiting me." "Ruoxi, these words are too cold. If it wasn't because I have been rather busy recently, I would accompany you in the hospital more. Actually, for people like us, this type of peaceful contact is what we lack," said Xu Zihong with some regret. This time Lin Ruoxi wasn't even interested in replying. As if nothing was heard, she stared blankly out of the window. Wang Ma, who was at the side cleaning up the breakfast utensils, felt that the silent atmosphere of the room was too awkward, and was just about to speak some polite words on behalf of Lin Ruoxi when she saw Yang Chen standing at the entrance of the ward. She immediately revealed a relieved smile and said, "Young master, you're here.